Hello and welcome to Sideline Story, your destination for sports news, analysis and discussions. I'm Yang Guang. This week we focus on the new season of the UEFA Champions League and preview the top teams' prospects in the elite European club competition. For this chat, I'm joined here with my fantastic co-hosts Tianyu and Brandon Yates. All right, let's take a look at the English contingent. For the first time ever, we are seeing a record 6 Premier League teams competing in the Champions League this season. Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, Tottenham, Newcastle and Manchester City. But the question is, does quantity translate to quality? Tianyu, after a couple of seasons where English teams, maybe aside from Manchester City, seem to falter in Europe, are we seeing a resurgence from English teams as we can see the 6 teams are competing this season?
Well, yeah, I would actually say so, because when you look at the 6 teams, Arsenal and Liverpool are definitely the 2 strongest contenders in the Premier League so far. Both of them have added real depth after the summer window. I mean, and also Chelsea is a bit of up and down in the league lately, but don't forget they're the defending Club World Cup champion. And also City had a rough start, but that 3-0 win over United, sorry Brandon, it was just a statement that they are not going anywhere. With Guardiola still in charge and a squad filled with world-class players, they're always dangerous once they had, they get rolling. Newcastle and Spurs might not be as, decorated as the other ones, but both of them are tricky teams to face. Newcastle's intensity, especially at home, just makes them a nightmare draw. Tottenham, with the changes under the new coach Thomas Frank, they're playing with more direction and energy than we have seen in years. So I would say no one can really walk into a match against either of those sides expecting an easy win. So yeah, when you add it all up, the Premier League is fair to say it is the deepest and most competitive league. So yeah, that's why I'm pretty optimistic that the English Cup clubs aren't just here to make up the numbers. I think they are seriously competing for the trophy this year.
Right. Brandon, what do you make of English teams' prospects in the Champions League this season? Is the brutal domestic schedule an asset that prepares them for anything, or a liability that leaves them too drained for a European push?
Well, just to quickly touch on Tianyu mentioning the 3-0 loss for Manchester United, I'm not that upset about it this week because my favorite team, the South African rugby team, the Springboks, we got a historic win against New Zealand. We handed them their biggest defeat in their entire history on the weekend, so that made the Manchester United loss a little bit easier to deal with because the whole country is jumping for joy at the moment after we absolutely thrashed New Zealand in the rugby. So it was a pretty good weekend, obviously without that Manchester United loss. But yeah, looking at the English teams, particularly with this new format, I think in the initial stages, the league phase at least, I think that's where quantity is actually more important than quality. And I think that what these English teams have been able to do in terms of squad depth to deal with not just the Premier League, but also the domestic cup competitions and, of course, this extended Champions League, I think they've added some incredible depth, but also have kept quality in key positions. And also, a lot of these teams are really experienced at going all the way in terms of domestic and European club competition. I mean, just Tottenham, for example, won the Europa League again, beating Manchester United. But so a lot of these top English teams are really experienced at playing high quality football on a regular and grueling schedule. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of these English teams have added immense squad depth, and I think that's going to benefit them majorly in the league phase. When it gets to the knockout phases, then I think these teams with maybe a little bit more confidence and quality at the latter stages of the Champions League. I think of the likes of, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, maybe one or two Italian teams. They might have the edge in like those 90th minute moments or, just having a slight edge in knockout football. But I also think that we need to remember that even though some of these Premier League teams have added depth in positions and not necessarily added to their starting lineup, some of these teams Their starting lineup quality is really immense, and some of the players that didn't necessarily perform incredibly well last season are looking very strong last season. So, for example, Manchester City, I think they're still a little bit not frail, but not particularly strong defensively. But then when you look at what someone like Erling Haaland is doing, I think that's going to strike fear in many Champions League teams
Yeah.
because I think he's probably the deadliest attacker in the world right now. So I think, that combined with Pep Guardiola and, Phil Foden making a comeback and, some of the injuries that they had last season coming back, I think they're looking strong. I mean, Liverpool with, Alexander Isak, hasn't even played yet. I mean, and Arsenal, some of the depth that they've added in attack that people weren't giving a chance, like Madueke and Eberechi Eze coming in, and like I said, and Tottenham managing to secure Xavi Simon, and
Yeah.
there's just a lot of I think quality that the English teams have added to their lineups and their squad overall. But beyond that, having the numbers, so just having six teams there, like just from a mathematical standpoint, I think it's well, first of all, it says a lot about the Premier League and how competitive and how strong that league is, and I think that there's no doubt whatsoever. But also, when you've got six teams competing in the Champions League from one country, like even if five of those teams fall out and one gets through, and that team has a chance to go all the way, it really adds to the odds of a Premier League team being successful in the Champions League. So I think that this is probably the best year for quite a while that a Premier League team has a chance of going really deep in the Champions League and potentially lifting the title once again. I mean, I say that, I mean, obviously, City and Liverpool have done incredibly well in the Champions League in recent seasons. But I think that just from a mathematical standpoint, I think that this is going to be a very good year for English football in the Champions League. I mean, we'll get into some of the top competitors later in the podcast. I don't think any of the English teams are necessarily favorites besides maybe Liverpool. But I think that there are definitely going to be two or three English teams that are, in and around the knockout phases. And when you get to that sort of format, anything can happen. And I think squad depth is important at that point, but not necessarily the most important thing, but, important overall.
Now, shifting our focus to the holders, Paris Saint-Germain last season they finally got their touch for the trophy after years of pursuits. But the question now is, can they keep it? Paris Saint-Germain has been drawn into what many people are calling the fixtures of death in the first phase of action. They have to face the likes of Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Tottenham, Newcastle and Leverkusen, and even Bilbao and Sporting Lisbon are not easy opponents. So Tianyu, with these tough opponents to deal with in the group stage, is PSG's title defense already in jeopardy before it's even really begun?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be really tough for PSG to defend their titles. I mean, when the new with the new Champions League format, the competition has really gone up a little bit, gone up a level, I would say. Winning it now isn't just about tactics or having a few star players. It's you need real squad depth and the ability to rotate when injuries pile up. So PSG actually let Donnarumma go to City, and I think they didn't make any huge signings in the transfer window so far. So when you consider the fact that guys like Dembele and Barcola, they have been in and out for quite some time, and with injuries, it feels like their path this year is anything but smooth. And plus, if you go back to the Club World Cup, I think Chelsea has just showed everyone there are loopholes in PSG's tactics and system, especially when you press them right. So I'm sure other clubs will also take note from that. So overall, I think I'm not very optimistic about their title defense. And if Dembele and Barcola can't stay healthy, I think their lack of depth could be exposed pretty quickly. And yeah, I think there's a real possibility that they don't even make it out of the group stage this time.
Yes, that's where I kind of agree with you. I think it's a little bit too bold to say this, but I do believe they might not be able to go to the second stage, or at least they will have to, go through the playoffs to be there. PSG is now the team to beat in Europe. Every opponent will be trying 100%, if not 120%, try to knock them down. I mean, at the Club World Cup, Chelsea has showed that PSG also bleeds, and it's, like you said, it's smelled all over Europe.
Yeah.
So combining with these crazy fixtures, I mean, no one can guarantee that PSG is safe in the group stage. But Brandon, is it hyperbolic to suggest that a star-studded team like PSG could genuinely face the shock of an early exit, or are they just too talented that no one should worry about them?
Look, I think it's unlikely, but in terms of going out that early, but I think everybody in the Champions League under this new format has to be concerned about potentially going out, sooner
Yeah.
than they have done in the past, just because of the new format and the amount of quality that every team is going to face basically from the beginning. It's pretty incredible. Even though, it's a grueling schedule, I think it just makes the competition incredibly exciting because I think it's probably the most unpredictable that the Champions League has ever been. And the amount of quality coming from countries and leagues all around the world is immense. I think
Yeah.
that all the leagues, well, most of the leagues around the world, I think have gotten stronger, except the French league. So I think that's something that might be, we need to take into consideration is that I think that PSG probably face on a regular basis domestically a lot less fierce competition than teams from the Premier League, La Liga, or Bundesliga, or even Serie A face. I mean, even Serie A, I
That's
mean,
true. Yeah.
the amounts of depth there, Juventus, AC Milan, Inter Milan, now, of course, Napoli looking incredibly strong and winning the league. And the Bundesliga, as Young Guan can tell you, is no longer a foregone
Hmm.
conclusion for Bayern Munich. Even some of the Spanish teams away from Real Madrid and Barca and Atletico have also gotten stronger. But I mean, I can't mention more than two teams that might be able to even slightly compete with PSG in the domestic league or in any of the domestic cup competitions. So maybe that's where somewhere like a team like PSG might have a bit of an edge because I think that they save all of their best efforts and their best performances for the Champions League because I don't think they ever have to really go above and beyond to secure their domestic club knockout competitions or the actual league itself. So yeah, look, I don't think it's going to be an easy run for PSG. It's not going to be an easy run for any Champions League teams. But particularly, some of those fixtures that we mentioned for PSG early on, I think that they could potentially struggle, especially with and it pains me to say this, I'm a huge Donnarumma fan, and I think in his first game for Manchester City, he's already shown the quality that he has, and I think that is a huge coup for Manchester City and a huge loss for PSG. But again, just having a decent shot stopper, I think at least domestically for PSG is going to be enough for them, So I don't think they need to be concerned about the loss of Donnarumma for their domestic competitions. But I think in the Champions League, some of the saves that he pulled off against Arsenal, for example, and some of those knockout games for PSG, I think that he was a huge factor as to why they were eventually crowned the Champions League winners, along with the performances of Doué and Dembele and Hakimi and all of these and Vitinha and all of these immense performances from PSG players. I think Donnarumma was hugely in that conversation, so I think his loss is massive. But I don't think PSG can be written off this early. Even though, like Tian, you mentioned, they haven't done that much in the transfer market and they have lost the best goalkeeper in the world.
Right. Before we move on, here's a quick review of the biggest sports headlines in China and around the world for the past week. Kylian Mbappe scored 2 penalties as 10-man Real Madrid launched their latest Champions League campaign with a 2-1 comeback victory over Marseille. Madrid midfielder Federico Valverde says it's the team's job to make the most of Mbappe.
I am happy to have him and happy to have him here as one of my teammates. I think he always gives his best, right? I always say it is our job to make the most of Kylian and try to ensure that he enjoys scoring goals.
Bayern Munich opened their Champions League campaign with a statement 3-1 victory over Club World Cup holders Chelsea, with Harry Kane scoring twice. Liverpool staged a dramatic 3-2 win over Atletico Madrid thanks to Virgil van Dijk's stoppage time header. The fixture between Juventus and Dortmund finished in a spectacular 4-4 draw in Turin. Jose Mourinho was confirmed as the new head coach of Benfica, replacing Bruno Lage following the Portuguese side's shocking 3-2 home defeat to Karabakh of Azerbaijan in the Champions League. Mourinho briefly managed Benfica during the 2000 to 2001 season. Armand Duplantis cleared 6.3 meters at World Athletics Championships in Tokyo to break the men's pole vault world record for the 14th time. The Swede missed twice at 6.3 before soaring over on his third attempt.
This is like very much extra special for me and everybody, I would say, and of course it's going to make the biggest splash, I would imagine, too, is whenever you're able to do it, because this is our most important competition of the year. If it was Olympics last year, that's by far our most important competitions.
It's also Duplantis' fourth world record of the season. Also in Tokyo, Alphonse Felix Simbu snatched gold in the first photo finish for a marathon at a major championship, edging out Manuel Petros of Germany to give Tanzania its first world title. The photo finish showed the race was decided by 300th of a second as Simbu surged past the diving Petros at the line. Germany pulled off a stunning 88-83 victory over Turkey on Sunday to win the Eurobasket title for the first time since 1993. Point guard Dennis Schroeder drained a late jump shot and then added a pair of high-pressure free throws in a thrilling finish for Germany. China overpowered India 4-1 to win its third Women's Hockey Asia Cup title and its first since 2009. Head coach Alison Arnon hailed the Chinese performance in the final.
I said to the players after the game, it's them that's doing it. They are just such great athletes to be coaching. And at halftime we had a talk and I asked some things of them, and then they went out and they did it.
The hosts also secured qualification for the 2026 Women's Hockey World Cup in Belgium and the Netherlands. Welcome back. We analyzed the Premier League giants prospects. We looked into PSG's tough fixtures. Now the big one. Who have the best chances of going all the way to lift the trophy at the end? First of all, we have to take a look at the usual suspects. Real Madrid with that mythical aura in their Champions League competition, and Bayern Munich is always a force. By the way, I still believe Bayern owns one of the best, if not the best, attacking combo within their squad in the Champions League, and Liverpool is the betting favorite this season in the Champions League. But Tianyu, who has this perfect combination of squad depth, manageable domestic league, and that X factor to go all the way to lift the trophy?
Well, I'll probably go with Liverpool this time because, they just look like the most complete team. And on paper, their squad is stacked. The attacking line got a big lift with the likes of Alexander Isak, Hugo Ekitike, and Florian Wirtz joining the club. Those signings just give them space, creativity, and finishing ability up front. They are like three different weapons to complement what they already had. And it's not just about the stars. Some of the other signings like Jeremy Frimpong and Milos Kerkez, they are also quite doing the really solid jobs. And when you can bring in players who aren't necessarily household names, but still perform at a high level, that's how you build depth for a tournament like this. And then there are the veterans. Virgil van Dijk, he's still the rock in defense. And Mo Salah, even at his age, still look as sharp as ever. So if you add that all together, you've got a blend of youth, energy, and experience that feels perfect for a Champions League run. So last year, Liverpool fell short against PSG in the quarterfinal on penalties. But this year, this time around, with a deeper and more talented squad, I think they have every reason to believe that they can go one step further and actually lift the trophy.
Yeah, on paper, I agree with you that Liverpool looks very strong. But if you take a look at their first four Premier League games, I think strategically, Isak and Ekitike are kind of overlapping in their role. The four wins from the Premier League's first four fixtures all came from late goals.
Yeah.
Against the Burnley, that attacking trio didn't work that well. They have to rely on the late penalty to win that match. So I think sometimes the attacking power of Liverpool is kind of exaggerated. Maybe their chemistry isn't there yet. But I think for now, people kind of overestimate it. Brendan, how about your choice for the favorites of the Champions League this year? Is there a clearly standout favorite, or is it more wide open than it's been in a while?
Ooh, I think it's more wide open than ever, which I think is fantastic for football and the Champions League. I think that, again, with this new format, I think every year it's going to get more and more unpredictable about, who's going to go on and be the favorite. And again, just with the strengthening of all the leagues and squads from around the world, I think just football in general is going to be more and more unpredictable, which is fantastic for the sport. But Yang Guang, you mentioned some important factors about Liverpool there. In the Premier League, even though there are 4 wins from 4, and it's like the best start that they've ever had in the league season, they came back from goals down. They got last minute winners. They required a red card and a late penalty to get over the line against Burnley. So it's not all smooth sailing for Liverpool. But that being said, as someone that has watched Manchester United for years, even in those tough games, winners find a way to win.
Yeah.
And Liverpool are finding ways to win, even early on in the season, and with all of these new signings, and with some profile departures like Trent Alexander-Arnold. So even though it hasn't been gelling and clicking and finding combinations very early on in the season, the squad depth alone, I think, is making Liverpool a very scary prospect. But also, even though they aren't necessarily, gelling completely as a team yet, they are still finding those ways to win. And I think that when they do get to a point when, they are functioning as a team, and I think Arne Slot will have the ability to get that squad playing together perfectly very soon. I think that's going to be a very scary prospect for any teams in the Premier League and the Champions League. So I think that something that's also very important for teams that win from not necessarily playing well is that they get the confidence from winning and the points from winning, but also they are able to identify which areas they need to fix without actually suffering any losses. So I think that what's going to benefit Liverpool is that, they've gotten off to this incredibly strong start, but they can also very early on in a season, which not many successful teams early on in a season can do, is identify what they need to fix now. So I think that by the time Liverpool, when they start going deep into the Premier League, I think that squad depth and fixing little holes in their squad, I think that's going to make them an incredibly strong prospect. So yeah, I think Liverpool as an odds-on favorite, I think makes sense, and I think they're going to get a lot stronger as the season progresses, which is a pretty scary prospect considering they're already 4 wins from 4 in the Premier League. But I think other teams to look out for in the Champions League this season, I think, are teams that were hurt last season. So I think of, you guys will like this, Bayern Munich and Real Madrid. I think they will be incredibly disappointed with how things went in the Champions League last season, and I think that they've made some quality signings. Look, Yang Guang, you mentioned, I think Bayern Munich have done some pretty smart business here and there. But I mean, the depth that Real Madrid have been able to add, and I think bringing in a very hungry manager in Xabi Alonso.
Yeah.
And just, having the likes of Mbappe fit and Jude Bellingham fit, and, some of the defensive reinforcements and some of the youngsters coming through. I think Real Madrid are going into the La Liga and Champions League season desperate to, overhaul what Barcelona have been able to do and just get back to winning ways. So I think that Real Madrid away from Liverpool are probably going to be my odds-on favorites to not just have a successful Champions League campaign, but just an overall really, really successful campaign domestically as well. So I think Real Madrid and Liverpool are probably the two standouts for me. And if I had to pick one, I think Real Madrid this season, with their squad depth and their potentially injury-free starting 11, I think they are looking like an incredibly daunting team for any team to come across this season.
I hope your prediction can come true.
Yeah. I hope Real Madrid and Liverpool can be the victims from Bayern Munich in their title run. Now, for the fun part, the dark horses. Every year, a team comes from relative obscurity to make a deep run in the Champions League. Last season, Aston Villa made it to the quarter-finals and gave a huge scare for PSG. And this season, I'm looking at the Kazakh team called Kairat Almaty. It's also geographically the closest club to China, which is competing in this season's Champions League. And I know a lot of Real Madrid fans have bought air tickets to go to Almaty to watch Real's match there in October. with their home stadium quite in a distance with most of European clubs, I think they might be able to trigger some upsets in the first stage, facing, the jet lag troubled guests. So Tianyu, who's the team you are going to keep your close eye on that could shock everyone?
Well, for me, it's Tottenham.
Tottenham, okay.
Yeah, I think, Spurs are often seen as the team that run out of the gas later in the season. But I think things feel different now under the new coach, Thomas Frank. Because if you watched them against City, you would have noticed that the new energy and fresh tactics he's brought in, they are more structured and they still have the edge going forward.
I think Spurs is a very interesting option here because when people talk about title favorites, no one count them in.
Yeah.
But they are a force that no one can underestimate in their Champions League journey. Brendan, any team that could shock title favorites or the powerhouses along their journey for the Champions League trophy?
Look, I don't think Tottenham are going to shock any of the title contenders, but I agree with Tianyu. I think that they can have a deep run because I think they've added some quality in key positions, and I think Thomas Frank is a very underrated manager, and I think he can do some really good things with this Tottenham side. And I also think, again, as a United fan, I hate saying this stuff, but I think Tottenham will also take a lot of confidence from that Europa League victory last season. So I think that they are going to be just winning a European club competition is a confidence booster, even though it's below the Champions League. But I think Tottenham, will go into that competition with some serious confidence, and I think they can even, they're probably aiming for a top four position in the Premier League this season as well. So I think they're definitely a team to keep an eye on. But I think for me, a team that will have taken a lot of confidence from last season and have added some interesting depth here and there is Napoli. I don't think a lot of teams are talking about, Napoli. I think, with the success that they were able to achieve in Serie A and, the addition of invaluably experienced Kevin De Bruyne, and it seems like any team that has failed Manchester United players in their squad, like Scott McTominay and Rasmus Højlund, all of a sudden they decide to become superstars once they leave Manchester United. So I think that always is going to benefit Napoli, and I think Højlund's already got his first goal for Napoli, even though he couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat at Manchester United.
All right, let's see which underdog will surprise us and which powerhouse will shine at the UEFA Champions League this season. With that, we end this episode of Sideline Story. Thank you so much for joining us. Subscribe to Sideline Story and leave your comments wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information, you can also check our website at radio.cgtn.com. Until next time, stay on the sidelines with us.